This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, this is Kenny Williamson, and welcome back to another episode of McKill's Dead Chronicles. It's your host, it's me, Kenny Williamson, and I'm back. It's been a few days, about 10 days since I've done a podcast. Needed to get out here, but you know how that life sometimes interrupts you, and you got to go to work, and you got to get stuff done, and you just don't have time to do the things you want to do. So I thought I would come out here and get in the studio and talk a little bit about some things that was on my mind. One of those things just happens to do with Joe Biden. You know Joe Biden. Hold on a second. Let me get him up here. Joe Biden.
Come on, man.
You know. His name has came out again. You know, I've mentioned several times that, you know, not the same person. Of course, I get pushback on that. People are like, "Oh, you're crazy. It's the same guy." So, you know, you can look for yourself and see that it's not the same guy, but it's the same guy. Well, not too long ago, our President Trump, he came out on Truth Social, and he said it wasn't the same guy. Okay? Of course, people are like, "Oh, well, you know, he's probably just blowing and going like he does a lot." Well, as you know, Epstein files got released, more of them the other day. So now we've got Epstein files circulating around, and lots of people in the Epstein files, all kinds of stuff. And of course, a lot of these Epstein files are emails that went back and forth between people and Epstein, right? On a side note, okay, well, one of these emails mentions Biden. We'll get to that in a second. I just remembered, though, you know, some of the emails was going back and forth to one of the guys that owns the Life Touch program, the one that they go to the school. So they go to your kid's school and they take your pictures every year. And they take your picture whether or not you buy the picture or not, and they keep it. So I've always wondered myself, what are they doing with all these pictures, right? Why do they want a picture of your child every year from kindergarten all the way to high school? Well, come to find out, one of the guys that owns one of those companies, guess what? He's a big Epstein guy. Likes to go over there to Epstein Island, fly on jet airplanes. Has a lot to do with kids. So what a perfect business to be into. I mean, let's say that you are a pervert, a godless pervert, and you want to exploit children. And you're good friends or buddies with a guy who's known to do that. It even has an island for it. And so you have a company that goes into schools and takes lots of pictures of little kids. Now, I wonder where those pictures end up. On a server somewhere? You know, this can be categorized so somebody can say, "Show me all of your, 15-year-old brunettes." Type it out on the computer. Well, look at all these people. Well, where are they at? Well, this one was taken at a school in Oklahoma. This school. You know, so you could track them down really easy. And of course, if the person goes missing, I mean, hey, what a coincidence. Just don't look over here. Don't pay any attention to the fact, the same guy that owns the company. It's like Shutterfly, Shutter something, Life Touch. There's a couple of them merged together or something, and the same guy owns it, and he's in the Epstein files. Big money going back and forth according to the emails. So this makes you wonder, huh? Do you know what else was in the Epstein files? Like I said, Biden was mentioned in an email. So let me just get that pulled up so I can read what it said here. According to this person whose name was redacted, they were talking, to Epstein. And, supposedly Epstein knows what's going on. Just Google it. I mean, this guy is in pictures with everybody. He knows everybody, or did. I mean, I say did. He's probably still alive. So he knows everybody. So lo and behold, they go through his emails here, and it says that, let's see, in the latest batch of Epstein files released by the DOJ had references to allegations of U.S. President Joe Biden being unalived in 2019 by a firing squad. This sender of this email claims that Biden was subsequently replaced by a body double or clone. Okay. So this is also a claim which had been circulated on the Truth Social platform. So the sender and receiver of this email has been redacted by the FBI. But anyway, so the content was from some former associate, and it has to do with the Epstein deal something. And another thing they mentioned in this email was his mask. They talk about how the masks for the fake Biden keep getting worse. And these are emails that we're never going to see the light of day, supposedly. So just so happens, old Kenny over here, I'm not the only one that thinks he's a fraud. I wonder why. Can we look at some pictures to show you again? Do you need to see some pictures? I got some right here. Hold on a second. Here we go. Let's just pull this one up right here. There we go.
Instagram teen accounts have automatic protections for what teens see and who can contact them, plus time management tools. And Instagram will continue adding built-in safety features to help create age-appropriate experiences. Learn more about teen accounts and Instagram's ongoing work to protect teens online at instagram.com/teen accounts.
Now, if you're watching this on a video, I mean, you just take a look at those two, and you sit there and tell me with a straight face that's the same man. Okay? It's ridiculous. Not even close. But see, the one on the right is the one that you're going to see every day in the news. The one on the left was the one in the news all the time, but he's disappeared. Now we've got the one on the right. Completely different. Everything about him's different. The one on the left, his earlobes are not attached. The one on the right has attached earlobes. Hey, that just doesn't happen. Completely different people. Anybody could see that. There it is. They're claiming the one on the right's wearing a mask half the time. I don't know. I know I've seen several of them that they show with him, and you can see a line, and it's a different color. I don't know. But mask or no mask, that's a different person. So having said that, okay, it's been brought up before. Trump brought it up, and now it's in the Epstein files. And you know that I've brought it up several times. In fact, I put this same picture that I just showed on a TikTok. And said, what if I told you this wasn't the same person? And they completely hid that TikTok. They blackballed it. You can't find it. So it shows on my end and then shows like 3 views. Okay. It may be more now, maybe 30 views. But it's right next to one that got 77,000 views. And it got like 30 views. So anytime I post anything that has a picture or mentions the word globe, mentions the word or anything like that, it's immediately flagged and it gets no views. That's funny, isn't it? You know, it's funny that they would have to do that. They can't let somebody like me tell you what I think and then you draw your own conclusions based on your own research. Oh no. Get rid of it. Whenever they want to hide and suppress and get rid of stuff like that, that should be a red flag to you. Right? They've got something to hide. They don't want you to know. And, I mean, again, the stuff that's going on around here in this earth, on this earth, you know, most of it's fake. It's all fake. So, stuff just like this, and it goes over 99% of the population's head. Like I said, I listen to these religious radio stations every day. You know, American Family Radio, whatever. And they still talk about Biden, you know, and this thing, whatever this is, will, you know, skip around, fall down, do something stupid, and they're like, oh, blah. They still think that it's Biden, the real Biden. They're still calling that thing Biden. And then you see it again, and it's taller. Then you see it again, and it's shorter. It's ridiculous. I mean, they've got a video out now to where one of these so-called Bidens was up there giving a deal, and it takes off in the back parking lot and is walking, and there's not even any escort. There's no Secret Service or anything with him. And somebody says, hey, what are you, the Biden double? And the guy jumps around, you know, and takes off. And it's like, well, clearly that's not him. That's not Biden, but it looks like him. And so they figured out it's a body double. And that's why there's no Secret Service escort with him in the back parking lot, because he is nothing. He's an actor. It's unbelievable. So we've got a fake Biden running around. Of course, we knew that. And it's in the Epstein files. Now, this next thing I wanted to talk about was not in the Epstein files. However, it has got attention on TikTok and other places and brought to my attention. And so I thought I would mention it because this is something that I learned when I was in high school. Okay, I went to a very small, very backward, I'm sure, Oklahoma high school in the middle of nowhere. When I graduated high school, there was like 28 seniors that graduated. So that tells you the size of the school. You know, over here, close to where I live, you know, they've got thousands graduating at the same time. We had like 28. Okay, really, really small. Having said all that, that's beside the fact. When I was growing up, one of the things we talked about in school a lot was a woman by the name of Helen Keller. Now, your new generations have never heard of Helen Keller. Okay, they have no idea. But when I was growing up, they taught all about Helen Keller and how she was blind, she's deaf, and she was, you know, she overcame all this stuff. She was like a folk hero. And, you know, they didn't go in a whole lot of depth, but they said that she learned to read or write, and she learned to do a lot of stuff. And she was popular, she was famous because of it. So, you know, I kind of questioned it back then. I was like, okay, I don't know how you learn how to speak and read if you're blind and deaf from almost at birth. You know, if you lost your hearing and stuff after you already learned how to talk and you already knew what everything was and what it looked like, you could remember and say, oh, I know what a car looks like. And you could probably speak. You couldn't hear yourself speaking, but, you know, somebody could maybe give you some kind of sign to let you know you're speaking, I guess. You can't hear him, you can't see him, so I don't know how that would work. So that's what we were taught. Now, when I was growing up, there was lots of Helen Keller jokes about, her being blind and bumping into things, which I'm sure was not politically correct, but nothing was politically correct back then. Nobody cared. It was just a joke. So Helen Keller has got popular again because these younger generations have discovered her and they've read her accomplishments and they're calling bull. Okay. Now that everything is coming out about Helen, a younger population will read it and they're going to say, that is false. It's fake. It's fake news. Okay. Biden's fake and Helen Keller's fake.
Come on, man.
Yeah. Okay. How do we know this? Well, I guess you would just have to look at the list of her accomplishments. Let's run through some of those lists real quick. Okay, so in case you don't know who she was, Helen Keller, she was born in 1880 and she died in 1968. She was allegedly, an American author. So she was an author, I think, of 12 books. Keep in mind, she's blind, she's deaf, and she became blind and deaf when she was an infant. So none of us can remember what happened at a year old, 12 months old or whatever. None of us. That's when she became blind and deaf. Okay. So she's an author. She's a lecturer and an activist. Became one of the most well-known deaf and blind individuals in history. She's remembered for overcoming severe disabilities and for her advocacy in areas such as disability rights, women's suffrage, labor rights, and world peace. Do you know who she reminds me of? She reminds me of the guy in the wheelchair. You know who I'm talking about, right? Old Stephen Hawking. An astrophysicist that sits in a wheelchair. Another fake and a fraud. Now maybe when he was actually able to function, he may become an astrophysicist. Okay? Then he catches a disease, ALS or whatever it is that, the longest person who's ever lived with that after being diagnosed is like 7 years. He lives another 50 years. But for some reason, he's not in the Guinness Book of World Records for it. Now, you'd think he would be, but he's not. So he lives, but he also changes his looks 2 or 3 times, kind of like Biden. You go back and look at him, what he looked like in the 80s or late 70s when he was this astrophysicist, compared to what he looked like a few years ago when he died. Well, his hair changed color, and I don't mean because he got old and gray. We're talking he had dark brown hair, now he's got light brown hair. He's got a long, skinny face, now he's got a round face. Back then, his teeth were completely rotted off to the nubs. Now he has a full set of teeth that are also bad. I mean, the list goes on and on. Back then, he had a translator who translated everything he said, and they've got videos of it. He literally is sitting there in his chair making this noise. He's going, seriously, sounds just like that. And there's a guy sitting there saying, yes, he's saying that in his early 20s, he blah, 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 and he said this, and he said, it's obviously fake. Any fool can see that it's fake. So obviously they weren't able to keep that charade going very long, so then they said a computer's translating it. So then he has a computer, Windows-based, no doubt. Okay. He has a Windows computer sitting there, okay, somewhere. And he has a little bitty tiny thing that comes off the rim of his glasses, or the glasses thing, just kind of sitting there by his cheek. Somehow that little wire is reading his brainwaves and translating what he's thinking into a computer voice. Wow. I didn't even know technology like that existed, but it does for him. Okay? Keep in mind, this is another NASA deal. They have technology that nobody else has. They can do things that nobody else can do because laws don't apply to them. And I'm not talking about laws like laws like you went and broke the law. I'm talking about like laws of physics. Doesn't apply to them. And apparently these same laws don't apply to this guy. They don't apply to anybody. Because he's got his little deal and he just sits there with a stupid look on his face. And the computer comes on and says, "Hello, I am doing this." And the thing is, they don't even have a good computer voice. It's like they use the crappiest voice you could get. I mean, you've got technology reading your brain, reading your thoughts. But you've got a voice processor that sounds like something from, I don't know, 1960 Star Trek episode of some alien. I mean, it's ridiculous. But, that's, yeah. So he's one of the fakes. One of the fakes. Stephan Hawking. Fake as fake gets. So now here we are again. And I don't know if anybody believes in that either, but now we're back on to Helen Keller because she's popped up again because people are like, who? What'd she do? Bull. So she's deaf and she's blind. Okay. So let's see. It says at 19 months old, she suffered an illness, possibly scarlet fever or meningitis. They don't know. Left her deaf and blind. So without sight or hearing, she developed her own system of gestures to communicate family. But she became increasingly frustrated because, how's anybody going to know what you're thinking if you can't speak? You can't hear what you're saying and you can't see. You don't even know if the people heard you. You can't see it, right? Yeah. So supposedly she goes to work with this lady, a teacher named Anne Sullivan. And this is in 1887. And this is at some institute for the blind. And this Sullivan was able to teach her all this stuff. So Sullivan somehow taught her the alphabet. Can't see, you can't hear, but you know the alphabet. Let's see here. So from that point, supposedly, Helen Keller, she rapidly learned different languages, and including Braille. And then, not only could she read Braille, she learned to speak. She studied multiple languages and supposedly spoke like 4 or 5 different languages. Now, think about that. You're deaf, you're blind, but you can learn to speak multiple languages clearly. How would you know? How would you know if you're pronouncing the words right? How would you learn the words if you can't see or hear? How can you do that? Show me somebody that's done that besides this person in a textbook that's dead and gone and nobody knows if any of it's true. Okay, so let's see what all she did. Oh, yeah. Then she decides she wants to go to college, and she graduates with a Bachelor of Arts degree from Radcliffe College, and she graduated with honors. So now, supposedly, this Anne Sullivan remained with her as a companion and an interpreter throughout her education and much of her life. So, is this Anne Sullivan doing the college work, or is it Helen Keller doing the college work? How exactly do you do a lecture in a college, listen to a lecture, when you're deaf and you're blind? How do you do that? And learn and are able to take a test on the subject and graduate with an honor unless somebody just handed it to you. I don't understand. I don't understand that. So then she goes on, of course. She starts writing now. She starts writing books, essays, and articles. She writes, a book called The Story of My Life, her autobiography, The World We Live In, Out of the Dark, essays on socialism and social reform. And then she also writes another book called My Religion, later retitled Light in My Darkness. And her writings covered not only personal experiences, but also social justice, spirituality, and politics. How do you know anything about politics? How do you know what's going on somewhere else when you can't hear or see? How do you know anything about social justice? You don't. Okay? Fake. That's what we live in, is a fake, ridiculous, I don't know what. Okay, and it just so happens, she was an activist too. I mean, she was a socialist. So she was a socialist, and she supported labor rights and workers' protections. She advocated for women's suffrage, birth control access. So so she's a socialist. So she's into what? Killing babies? Sounds like it. Anti-war and pacifist causes. So she joined an organization called the Socialist Party of America and American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU. So here we go again. Godless Democrat, if you will, or lunatic left, pro-abortion, pro-women's lib, pro-socialist. So in other words, hey, come on in and take everything. Take everybody's stuff. They don't need it. Imagine that. Sounds an awful lot like about our astrophysicist, don't it? Godless. Labeled as a genius. Can't speak except through a computer. Through a brain-reading wave machine. Sure. My guess is there's somebody behind the scenes typing on the computer making it say that. Wouldn't that be the logical conclusion? So they stick a clown out there, a puppet, okay, in a wheelchair, so you'll feel sorry for him. And he's got a disability. So you can't say anything negative about him, or you're a bigot. You're a racist. You're a fiend if you call it out for the fake that it is. It's like, oh, I see. You've got you a little talking puppet there, don't you? You got a puppet on a string. So you're going to tell everybody that they're a genius, unsurpassed. And they're disabled. So you can't say anything about it. You have to agree with everything they say. And it just so happens that they're a communist and godless. And they're going to sit there and tell you in their computer voice, or in this case, I haven't heard her voice, but supposedly she talked with a British accent. Imagine that. Oh, Helen Keller's never heard anybody speak, but she talks with a British accent. But she can also speak multiple languages. So hey, I mean, it takes a lot of genius, doesn't it? So we had our physicist genius, godless, a godless devil, telling everybody there is no God, and to basically, you're your own God, and, go into outer space. This one here, well, she's blind and deaf, but she's a genius, see, because she can do all the stuff that nobody else can do. Now, you can't say anything about it. Or you're a bigot because she's blind, she's deaf, she's handicapped. But she's writing books. She speaks multiple languages. She's doing all this stuff. In fact, it says she became an international lecturer. She's visited a dozen of countries across Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. What's the point? That's my question. Think about this for a second. If you can't wrap your mind around this, close your eyes. If you can see nothing, you can hear nothing. How do you know you're in another country? How do you even know? You can't hear anybody tell you, and you can't see it. How would you know the difference? If somebody said, oh, by the way, you're in Spain, how would you know if you can't hear or see? Oh, I'm just kidding. You're really in Greece. I was just kidding again. You're really in London. Oh, never mind. You're in Africa. Which is it? How would you know? It's a good story. Good story, bro. I don't believe it, but it's a good story, right? I don't believe it for 1 second. Yeah, so let's see some of the other stuff she supposedly did. She met with world leaders and promoted disability education and accessibility. Well, I can tell you right now, you'd have to show me. I have to see it to believe it. I don't know of anybody else that's blind and deaf that can do this stuff. Do you? I mean, I'd love to talk to them, but how could I? I don't know sign language, and if I did, they couldn't see it. How am I supposed to communicate to them to tell them what to say or ask them questions? They can't see me and they can't hear me. So I don't know. Yeah, so let me look at this other list here. Okay. So she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1964 by President Lyndon Johnson. She was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. Numerous schools, organizations, and awards are named after her. Her life story has been, of course, portrayed in films, Hollywood, in other words. Most famously, The Miracle Worker, a play and film about her childhood. Okay, seriously? Well, when you read off all the stuff that she allegedly did, somebody's lying. Okay, either she wasn't really blind and deaf if this happened. She was faking it. Something was being faked. It had to have been. Or her helper, Anne Sullivan, who went with her everywhere, she helped to perpetuate this fraud, probably because she's receiving huge amounts of money, would be my guess. Either that, or the whole entire thing is a fake and a fraud, and she never even existed, or she existed and never did any of that stuff. But her actually doing all that stuff is so far-fetched, it's no wonder nobody believes it, especially the younger generation. They can see right through this. They're like, give me a break. Nobody can do that. Just like nobody can do what Stephen Hawking was doing. The technology didn't even exist. So nobody can do what he's doing either. And, they've got another one out there, which I was going to do a whole podcast on one of these days. The singer, the blind singer that may or may not be blind. You remember that one? Have you heard about that one? Stevie Wonder. Yeah. Well, I've seen numerous interviews with other people who say he's not even blind. Now, he pretends to be blind. Everybody says he's blind. How dare you say he's not blind? But he's been caught on camera like he's standing there, supposedly completely blind, 100% blind. And a mic stand starts to fall. He reaches out and grabs it real quick and stops it. A blind man. How'd he see it? I don't know. And then one of the guys that he's on stage with says that he walks up to him on stage, walks right up to him, up the stairs, all this stuff, walks right up to him. And he said it's like he realized, oh, wait a second, I can't do that. I'm blind. So then he just stops and stands there and says, will you take me to my microphone? And the guy's like, you've already walked all over the building and walked right up here to me. Why didn't you just walk to your microphone? It's closer. But, and there's also a video where where he's standing there, and watching something, and this lady starts blowing kisses, and he starts blowing kisses back. It's like, how'd you know she's blowing kisses? You're blind. How'd you know? So now you'll see him take his glasses off, and his eyes look weird. They look like they're kind of whited out a little bit. Well, they're like, see, look at his eyes. He's blind. Well, most blind people's eyes don't look like that, number one. And it just so happens, my neighbor had a dog, and its eyes looked like that. Its eyes were like whited over, and it would show up, and people were like, oh my gosh, look at that dog. It's blind. That poor blind dog. I'm like, that dog's not blind. That dog was normal as any other dog. But look at its eyes. It's got whited over. So I realize its eyes look weird, and they're whited over a little bit. But the dog can see and hear just fine. It does everything normal. It can see. Like, it can be sitting over there, and you can be like, wave a bone up, and it runs to it. It can see. I'm telling you, the dog is not blind. Well, his eyes look like that. They've got this white layer over him. So, he's blind. He may just have weird looking eyes. And then you put the glasses on and hide them and tell everybody you're blind. Now you're disabled, and then all of a sudden you're able to do more things, and now you're like a superhero when it's not even true. Now, I'm not saying there aren't blind people, clearly, but I know people do fake things, and there's lots of fakes out there. Years ago, I drove a bus route at the college, picked up people. Well, I had these people, when you had somebody that was handicapped, you had to do a lot of extra different things. You had to stop the bus at a certain place. You had to push this thing. The bus had to lower to the ground. You had to open the door. You had to come out. You had to talk to them and help them, a lot of extras. So here comes this blind couple. Okay, I'm using air quotes because they're standing there with their canes and they've got their dark glasses on. Okay, so I do all the stuff for them. Lower the bus down. Now, in the bus where you step, now because it's getting evening or whatever, it's dark right there. Okay, you can't see the steps very well. But see, you don't need to see the steps if you're blind, right? Because you can't see them anyway. So the lady, I think was the one leading them, she had these real dark glasses on, and she walks up there and starts to go to the steps, and she pulls her glasses down and looks over her glasses like to see where the step is, and then pushes them back up on her face and then steps up on the step. You see, a blind person doesn't need to do that. They're not worried about tripping and falling in the dark because they can't see the step because their glasses are too dark. They're not interested in that because they can't see anyway. But these people, they had to pull their glasses down to see where they were walking, then they put their glasses back up. They weren't really blind. Now, is there a chance they may have been partially blind? Possibly. Is there a chance that they're faking it for some kind of insurance check or government check? Very possibly. Especially when you see them pull their glasses down and look around to see where they're going and then put their glasses back on. That pretty much signifies to you that they're not blind. And so then when you have to go through the whole entire process of pretending they're blind and doing a whole bunch of extra stuff for them, and come to find out they're not blind, they're faking it, it kind of leaves a little taste in your mouth. It's like, yeah, there are some fakers out there. Now, are these guys fakers? Oh, Helen Keller fake? Well, you be the judge. Show me somebody else that can do stuff like that. And maybe it's a coincidence, but it just so happens these people who are, geniuses, like Albert Einstein. Oh, he was genius, supposedly. Really? How do you know that he made up any of that stuff? He was, he married his own cousin. He married his cousin, and I read an article on him that said that he wasn't even able to tie his own shoes. But that's not because he's dumb. That's because he's so smart. You see? You're so smart that you marry your cousin and you can't tie your own shoes. That makes you smart.
Now playing, Crime 101 hits theaters.
What is it that you do?
I take high-value items and make them disappear.
So you're a thief.
One crime connects them all.
I'm getting close. I know it.
But only one will walk away.
I underestimated you.
Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, Barry Keoghan, and Halle Berry.
We're good at this.
Yeah.
Crime 101, directed by Bart Layton. Rated R, under 17, not admitted without parent. Now playing only in theaters.
So he's a genius. Guess what else he was? Godless. He was a godless devil, is what he was. Everything he tried to tell you was the world is a sphere, okay, and there is no God. So believe everything I say. So, in other words, he's put up on a pedestal. So, according to the textbooks, the propaganda books that you're handed, he's a genius and believe what he says. And if he's too old school for you, well, let's move on up to the next one in the wheelchair. Believe everything he says. Stephen Hawking. He's an astrophysicist. He's a genius. Just ask him. Oh, well, he can't speak himself, but let the computer tell you. So the computer can tell you. Oh, by the way, the computer will also tell you that there is no God and, that kind of stuff. Of course, we've got Helen Keller in there, too. Godless. Socialist. Okay. Abortionist. Everything you're going to see in the liberal. Everything you're going to see in an anti-God, godless person. But hey, they're always the ones up in the textbooks. Look at me. This is what they did. Isn't it amazing? You'll never be that smart. They were that smart, and that's what they believed. So you should believe it. That's called lies and propaganda, FYI, okay? Instead of believing that kind of junk, open up your Bible and believe what it says. Okay, but they don't want you to do that, do they? Oh, no. No, be a socialist. Be anti-God. Be a godless devil that don't believe anything. Right. Anyway, so I thought that was pretty interesting. I thought I'd bring that to your attention in case you hadn't heard about it. And I just thought it was also pretty funny that old Biden is mentioned again in the Epstein files as being fake and wearing a mask. Who knew, right? Who would have ever thunk it that all these so-called smart people and people around here are actually fake dummies or puppets in masks or devils in masks? I don't know what they are. They're fakes. I know that. A lot of fakes running around. Anyway, let me know what you think about that. Let me know what you think. Give me an email at truthseekers2012@gmail.com. Oh, yeah, I'm supposed to tell you this. I've got, you can go check out McKill's Dead Chronicles there on TikTok. There's the Flat Earth Bible on Amazon. McKill's Dead Chronicles on Spotify and all other podcast platforms. And we've also got it on YouTube, and we've also got it on Rumble. So check out any of that if you want. Send me an email. Give me a comment. I'm wanting to do another episode on comments, questions, and answers. So send me your questions, your comments, and let's talk about it. Thanks for listening. I guess that's it for today. Until we meet again, God bless you.